The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Pharisees approached Jesus and asked, "Is it lawful for a husband to divorce his wife?" They were testing him. He said to them in reply, "What did Moses command you?" They replied, "Moses permitted a husband to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her." Jesus told them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts, he wrote you this commandment. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no human being must separate." In the house, the disciples again questioned Jesus about this. He said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." And people were bringing children to him that he might touch them, but the disciples rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he became indignant and said to them, "Let the children come to me. Do not prevent them. For the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Amen, I say to you, whoever does not accept the kingdom of God like a child will not enter it." Then he embraced them and blessed them, placing his hands on them. The Gospel of the Lord. God made them male and female. Male and female. Both. We hear in the first reading from the book of Genesis how the Lord created a partner for Adam by taking a bone from his side, created a woman. Male and female. They were to become one flesh. Jesus is referring to this in the gospel today. The Pharisees have approached Jesus and asked him a question to try to trip him up, put him on the spot in front of the people. They say to him, "Is it lawful for a husband to divorce his wife?" "Well," Jesus said, "what does Moses say to you?" And they said, they said a husband can write a bill of divorce and dismiss her. So we can read this gospel, and it's important that we not get caught up on the word divorce, because what it means in the scriptures is not all that it means for us. The Greek word for divorce is apolaio. Another translation of that word would be to dismiss or to let die. We might translate it as put down. That was because to dismiss the wife was severe in the culture. It's important to remember that the people at the time of Jesus did not get together and marry like we do. For hundreds of years, we've had this sort of romantic approach to marriage. People go out searching through the world. They finally run across someone that they fall in love with, and they decide, okay, now we'll get married. That's not how it was at the time of Jesus and in the ancient days. The parents basically arranged the marriages. What the children thought of it didn't seem to matter. In fact, the marriage was originally formed when they were children. We called it betrothal, as in the case of Mary and Joseph. Their parents went out, searched through the village, and decided that they would offer their daughter to a man to be betrothed, although they're still children. And so Joseph's parents and Mary's parents decide that, okay, someday these two are going to get married. And they're not very old, maybe they're this tall. So they are betrothed. Doesn't matter what they feel about it. Doesn't even matter what they think about it. They do as they're told in that culture. And so eventually people would mature and then get married. So it was not based upon feelings. It wasn't that romantic idea. It was based upon what's good for the families, what's good for the community. And that's how the marriages were arranged. And so they were seen as a very solid institution on which the village survival depends upon. And so it was seen as very important. What the Pharisees are bringing up is this idea of divorce, that the husband has the right to dismiss his wife, throw her out, leave her out to die, basically. In that culture, women had no rights on their own. They only had legal standing because of their husband or because of their father or because of an adult son. And if they lacked any of those or all of those, then they were at great risk in the society. They had no one to protect them. And so to put out a woman by her husband was seen as very important. And so Jesus is addressing this issue of the divorce. He really isn't talking about, again, divorce as we think of it. And so Jesus says, God made them male and female. Well, that's true. We heard that in the first reading. He made them male and female. What did that mean? It meant that they were equal. They were equal. It wasn't top, bottom, up or down. They were equal. Equal, right across, male and female. He goes on to say that a man is joined to his wife, they're equal, and become one flesh, equal. What God has joined together, no human being must separate because they're equal. Equality is at the very heart of this gospel. Over and over again in the gospel, Jesus is advocating for the status of women in that society. And he's doing it in this gospel passage because it all has to do with the equal standing of woman to a man. They would have been aghast. The men in the crowd would have stood there with their mouths open, not even knowing what he's talking about. But they're equal. They are made male and female and children of God. And so he is encouraging them to look at it in a new way. That the men and women are equal. We're still working on that over 2,000 years later. We haven't even got that straight yet. We're still working on it. Women are not equal in a lot of ways compared to men. And so that's a long-term project. But Jesus, over 2,000 years ago, was advocating it for the women of his day. And so then, they have this little child that comes onto the scene. Little children, as remember from last week, I was talking about the children, they were little nobodies. They didn't have any standing. They had less standing than the women. And they would just run about the village. And they would spy on the families and go home and tell mom and dad what's going on in the village. They were little news gatherers. And so when Jesus is talking to the crowd, little kids are there. They're running about. They've been sent over there to find out what Jesus is talking about. Is he doing something that's secret? Is he doing something we need to know about? And so the little kids are there. And so then they start coming up to Jesus, and Jesus is going to bless them, but his disciples say, no, go away. You're little nobodies. But Jesus says, no, let them come. Let the children come to me, because it is how people need to be in the kingdom of God. Jesus isn't calling us to be childish. He's calling the people to be childlike. And that is being open like a little child, open, willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to do what they're told. And that's how we are to be as what Jesus is preaching. And he's saying that we are to accept these little children because that is how we get to heaven, is to be like them. Remember last week we talked about the children, that by aiding them, by helping them, reaching out to them, we encounter Jesus. We encounter Jesus, and when we encounter Jesus, we also encounter the Father. And the little children are a means to that. Because God is with his poor, and we reach out to the poor and with the vulnerable, then we encounter God. And so now we have the children again. Jesus uses these children as a way of teaching that helping out the little ones, which means even the adults, those who are poor and vulnerable, we meet the presence of God in a special way since God is with them. With the little children, they're also examples for us to be like them. Be like them. So many, as adults, it's so easy to get entrenched in an ideology or a way of thinking, or we have our great opinions, or we have a way of thinking. We think that makes reality, but it doesn't. And we're called to be open to the Spirit, open to be being taught so that the Lord can lead us to a change of heart and mind, and not to be entrenched. There are people, and you may know them, they're so entrenched in their opinions, is that they're almost unteachable. You can't teach them anything. Because if you say something they don't agree with, one, they want to argue with you, and then they run away. They don't want to deal with it. That's not how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be like the little kids. We're open to the Spirit, open to have a change of heart and mind, metanoia, to have a change, and not to be entrenched in our opinions, but to let the Lord lead us and help us grow. And in that way, as we reach out to others, reach out to the little ones, or reach out to the other adults, we're called then to grow in our relationship with the community and grow in our relationship with God in doing that. We reach out to others, and in that way we become like Jesus as we journey through this life.